Welcome back to QuickSpeak, the English podcast for learners. We explore different topics, to help you expand your vocabulary
Yeah,
and maybe even your mind a little bit.
that's right.
And today, we're going to be tackling something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and that's this idea of multitasking.
Right.
Is it really all it's cracked up to be?
It's ingrained in our modern lives to believe that multitasking equals efficiency, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is our brains just aren't wired that way.
Okay, so let's break this down for our listeners.
Sure.
What's really going on in our brains when we think we're being like super efficient multitaskers?
Imagine this. You're trying to write an important email, answer a text message, and keep an eye on the news all at the same time. You might feel like you're managing it all, but what's actually happening is your brain is rapidly switching between each of those tasks.
So instead of our brains magically like processing everything simultaneously, they're like pulling off some lightning fast mental gymnastics behind the scenes.
Exactly, and those mental gymnastics come at a cost.
Okay. Every time your brain has to shift focus, it experiences what we call a switch cost. Think of it like this. You're driving down the road and you have to slam on the brakes, then accelerate again every few seconds. It's not a smooth ride, is it?
Ouch. No.
Yeah,
I can feel the whiplash just thinking about it.
right.
And I bet that mental whiplash is what leaves us feeling so drained at the end of the day.
Precisely. And it's fascinating.
What's that?
This constant task switching doesn't just tire us out mentally, it actually makes us significantly less productive.
Wait, really? How much less productive are we talking here?
Research suggests that multitasking can decrease productivity by up to a staggering 40%.
40%. That's like throwing away almost half of our workday.
Oh boy.
No wonder I sometimes feel like I'm constantly working, but never quite reaching the finish line.
And here's the thing. It's not just about lost time.
Okay.
There are other hidden costs to this constant task switching, things that impact the very quality of our work and our well-being. Oh, this is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about these hidden costs. What else is going on in our brains when we try to juggle too many things at once?
Well, one of the most significant consequences is the increased likelihood of making mistakes.
So we're essentially setting ourselves up for errors every time we try to multitask. That's a bit unnerving, to say the least.
It is, and it makes sense when you think about it. When we're constantly switching between tasks, our brains are forced to play catch-up, scrambling to retrieve the relevant information for each one. It's like trying to read 3 books at once.
Yeah.
You might retain bits and pieces, but you're unlikely to fully grasp any of them.
Oh, tell me about it. I've had moments where I've sent an email only to realize I'd attached the wrong document or forgotten to include crucial information. It's embarrassing. And I can definitely see how multitasking plays a role in those brain fart moments.
Exactly, and it's not just about those little slip-ups. The research on multitasking and error rates is actually quite alarming. Studies have shown that even brief interruptions like checking a notification on your phone can significantly increase the likelihood of making a mistake, especially in tasks that require focus and attention to detail.
It's like our brains have a limited amount of processing power, and every time we switch tasks, we're dividing that power up until we're running on fumes.
That's a great analogy. And when our brains are running on fumes, it's not just our accuracy that suffers, but our decision-making abilities as well.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. So if I'm constantly switching between tasks, I'm more likely to make poor decisions. That's a pretty scary thought.
It is something to consider. Research suggests that chronic multitaskers tend to be less effective decision-makers. They're more likely to make impulsive choices, be swayed by irrelevant information, and struggle to weigh potential outcomes effectively. It's as if the constant task switching overwhelms the brain's ability to carefully consider all the factors involved in making sound decisions.
Wow, it's like multitasking is slowly chipping away at our cognitive abilities. What other hidden costs should we be aware of?
Well, here's another one that you might not expect: creativity. You see, creativity often requires us to delve deep into a problem or idea, to allow our minds to wander and make unexpected connections. But when we're stuck in multitasking mode, our brains are so busy juggling the immediate demands that they don't have the mental space for those creative sparks to fly.
That makes a lot of sense. When I think about it, some of my most creative ideas come to me when I'm doing something mindless, like taking a walk or washing the dishes. It's like giving my brain a break from the constant juggling act, allow those creative juices to flow more freely.
Precisely. And this is where the whole always-on culture we live in becomes really problematic. We wear busyness as a badge of honor, assuming that doing more means achieving more. But in reality, this constant connectivity and pressure to multitask are hindering our ability to do our best, most innovative work.
You're preaching to the choir here. I'm definitely guilty of buying into that hustle harder mentality. But you're right, it's exhausting and ultimately counterproductive. It's like we're so busy trying to look productive that we're actually sabotaging our true potential.
It's a common trap, and it's something we need to be more mindful of. Because here's the thing. Our brains aren't machines. They need time to rest, recharge, and process information deeply. When we deny them those things, we're not just impacting our productivity, we're impacting our overall well-being.
It's true. When I think about the times I feel the most stressed and burnt out, it's usually when I'm trying to do a million things at once. So if multitasking is the villain in our story, what's the hero? What can we do to combat this always-on mentality and reclaim our focus?
The good news is that our brains are naturally wired for focus. It's just a matter of retraining ourselves to work with our brains, not against them.
So how do we do that? How do we break free from this multitasking madness and tap into our brain's natural ability to focus?
Well, it starts with recognizing that focus is a skill like any other, and it takes practice. Our brains have gotten so used to this constant stimulation and task switching that we need to retrain them to handle one thing at a time.
Okay, that makes sense. But where do we even begin? It feels like our devices and to-do lists are designed to keep us in this constant state of distraction.
You're right, there are a lot of external factors vying for our attention, but the key is to become more intentional about how we manage those factors and, more importantly, how we manage our own minds.
So it's about taking back control. I like that. But how do we actually do that? Do you have any practical tips for us?
Absolutely. One of the most effective strategies is something called time blocking.
Okay.
Instead of having a never-ending to-do list that we're constantly switching between, we allocate specific blocks of time for specific tasks.
So it's like scheduling a meeting with ourselves, but for our work or personal projects.
Exactly. And just like you wouldn't check your phone every minute during an important meeting, the goal is to eliminate distractions and give your full attention to that one task during its allotted time.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine there are different ways to implement this, right?
There are. You can start with smaller blocks, maybe 25 minutes of focused work, followed by a 5-minute break. That's actually the basis of a popular technique called the Pomodoro Technique.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. It's amazing how much more you can get done when you have a break coming up.
It's true. And as you get more comfortable with those shorter bursts of focus, you can gradually increase the length of your work blocks. The important thing is to find a rhythm that works for you and be consistent with it.
So it's about training our attention spans like we train a muscle. The more we practice focus, the stronger it becomes.
Exactly. And just like with physical exercise, it's important to create an environment that supports our efforts.
So we're talking about silencing notifications, finding a quiet workspace, maybe even putting our phones in another room.
All of that. It's about minimizing distractions and creating a space where our brains can fully engage with the task at hand. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Even something as simple as putting on noise-canceling headphones can make a world of difference.
Those are my best friend when I really need to focus. It's amazing how much those external stimuli can derail our train of thought without us even realizing it.
It's true. We underestimate the power of our environment in shaping our focus and productivity. But the good news is that we have the power to shape that environment to work for us, not against us.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing how much we think we know about productivity, but when we delve deeper into the science of our brains, it's clear that multitasking is not the magic solution we often make it out to be.
It's about working smarter, not harder. And that starts with understanding the limitations of our brains and embracing the power of focused attention.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of today's episode. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation about multitasking and discovered some valuable insights to help you work and live more effectively. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful topics and tips to improve your English. And be sure to let us know in the comments what topics you'd like us to tackle next. Until next time, happy learning.